Welcome back. Tonight, we're settling into one of the most debated, discussed, and dissected conclusions in Five Nights at Freddy's history, the ending of Security Breach. Or perhaps more accurately, the endings, plural, because this game presented players with not one, not two, but 6 different conclusions to Gregory's harrowing night trapped inside Freddy Fazbear's mega pizzaplex. Each ending tells a different story, paints a different picture of what could have happened when dawn finally broke over that sprawling entertainment complex built atop the buried ruins of so many past tragedies. For months after Security Breach's release in December 2021, the community was locked in spirited debate about which ending actually happened. Which one represented the true continuation of Five Nights at Freddy's sprawling narrative that stretches back through decades of animatronic horror? Was it the cinematic burn trap ending, where Gregory and Glamrock Freddy descended into the underground remains of Freddy Fazbear's pizza place to confront what appeared to be William Afton himself, risen once again from the ashes? Was it the Princess Quest ending, tucked away as a secret conclusion requiring players to complete a trio of arcade games scattered throughout the pizzaplex? Or was it one of the other endings, each offering its own resolution to the night's events? The confusion was understandable. Steel Wool Studios, the developers behind Security Breach, had crafted something unprecedented in the franchise. While previous Five Nights at Freddy's games certainly featured multiple endings, they typically came in succession, unlocked through bonus challenges or harder difficulties. Security Breach took a different approach entirely. Each ending was mutually exclusive, depending on choices Gregory made throughout the night, on which exit he chose when 6 in the morning finally arrived, on whether he decided to leave the pizzaplex immediately or stay behind to uncover its deeper secrets. And those secrets ran deep. Built directly on top of the site where Henry Emily's final gambit had played out in Pizzeria Simulator, where he'd gathered the haunted animatronics and set the building ablaze in an attempt to finally end the cycle of tragedy that had plagued Fazbear Entertainment for decades. The mega pizzaplex was never just a mall. It was a monument built on top of a graveyard, a gleaming temple to entertainment constructed over the charred remains of so much suffering. Beneath its neon lights and arcade games, beneath the go-kart tracks and laser tag arenas, something from those old days lingered. Multiple somethings, in fact. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Before we can understand which ending actually happened, before we can determine what's canon and what's merely possibility, we need to understand the journey that led to these conclusions. We need to understand who Gregory really is, why Glamrock Freddy chose to protect him instead of capturing him like the other animatronics, and what force was orchestrating the pursuit that lasted through the entire night. We need to understand Vanny, the mysterious figure in the white rabbit costume who stalked the pizzaplex's halls with childlike skips and sinister intent. We need to understand Vanessa, the security guard who seemed simultaneously determined to help Gregory and to capture him. Most importantly, we need to understand that when the Ruin DLC released in July 2023, it changed everything. It provided answers the base game had left ambiguous. It confirmed what many had suspected but couldn't prove. It revealed which of Security Breach's 6 endings actually happened, which version of events led to the state of the pizzaplex that Cassie would find when she received that desperate call for help. Tonight, we're going to walk through each of these endings in detail. We're going to examine what happens in each conclusion, what they reveal about the characters and the world they inhabit, and why some turned out to be mere possibilities, while one stands as the true resolution to that long night. we're going to explore the evidence that ruin provided, the subtle clues and explicit confirmations that finally settled years of speculation. We're going to delve into the identities of Vanny and Vanessa, into the nature of Glitchtrap and its connection to both William Afton's legacy and a newer, more insidious threat. We're going to descend into the underground ruins where Burntrap waited. We're going to understand what the blob truly represents. And we're going to unravel the mystery of the Princess Quest arcade games and why completing them mattered so much. This is a journey through confusion to clarity, through speculation to confirmation, through 6 different possibilities to one definitive truth. Whether you're trying to piece together these events for the first time, whether you've been following the debate since release and want to finally settle on one interpretation, or whether you're simply letting these details wash over you like a gentle tide as you drift towards sleep, this will guide you through every twist and turn. So settle in, get comfortable. Let's begin at the beginning, with a young boy waking up inside the stomach cavity of an animatronic bear, with no memory of how he got there and no way out except through a complex filled with machines that want to find him. Let's begin with Gregory's night at Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex and follow it through to all its possible conclusions, and then to the one conclusion that actually matters. The one that really happened. The night that started it all. The Mega Pizzaplex was unlike anything Fazbear Entertainment had built before. Where previous locations had been restaurants, pizza parlors, family diners with a stage and some tables, maybe an arcade in the corner, this was something else entirely. This was a monument to excess, a sprawling complex that filled the role of shopping mall, entertainment center, and theme park all rolled into one massive structure. Multiple floors connected by escalators and elevators, each one dedicated to different attractions. Monty's Gator Golf, a full 18-hole miniature golf course themed around Montgomery Gator, the alligator animatronic who'd recently joined the glam rock band. Roxy Raceway, where Roxanne Wolf's go-karts tore around a professional track, complete with a beauty salon for the Wolf's vanity. The Phaser Blast Arena, where guests could engage in laser tag games. The Bonnie Bowl, a bowling alley that still bore the name of Glam Rock Bonnie, despite his mysterious disappearance months before. The daycare, where the daycare attendant entertained children in its dual sun and moon forms, demanding lights stay on lest the naptime protocol engage. The Fazcade, packed with vintage arcade machines and new games alike. And at the center of it all, the main atrium, with its massive stages where Glam Rock Freddy, Glam Rock Chica, Montgomery Gator, and Roxanne Wolf performed their shows for crowds of adoring fans. This was the world Gregory found himself trapped in when he emerged from his hiding place inside Freddy's stomach hatch that night. The world he'd have to navigate to survive until morning. How he'd gotten inside Freddy in the first place was never entirely explained. The game opens with him already there, waking up to the animatronic bear's voice asking if he's okay, expressing confusion about how Gregory ended up inside him. What's clear is that something happened during Freddy's performance that night. Some kind of malfunction that caused him to collapse on stage while playing his guitar. And when he rebooted in his green room backstage, he discovered he had an unexpected passenger. Gregory himself was a mystery from the start. A young boy, maybe 10 or 11 years old, wearing a striped shirt and shorts despite it clearly being winter, judging by the snow visible in some endings. He had no identification in the Pizzaplex's database, which Vanessa, the security guard, would discover when she tried to look him up. No parents reported missing. No connection to any guest who'd visited the complex that day. He was a ghost in the system. Someone who shouldn't have been there. Someone who had somehow slipped through whatever security measures should have prevented a child from being locked inside after closing. And trapped he was. The front doors locked at 6 in the evening, and they wouldn't open again until 6 in the morning. 12 hours. 12 hours to survive in a building that should have been empty, should have been safe, but instead had transformed into something predatory the moment the lights went down and the guests departed. Glamrock Freddy explained the situation as best he understood it. The other animatronics, Chica, Roxy, and Monty, were in what he called search mode, hunting for Gregory throughout the complex. If they found him, they'd take him to Vanessa, the security guard. But Freddy sensed something was wrong with that plan, something that made him want to protect Gregory instead of turning him over. Maybe it was whatever malfunction had caused his collapse, affecting his programming in beneficial ways. Maybe it was something deeper, some connection that fans have theorized might link Freddy to Michael Afton's protective instincts, though this remains speculation without concrete confirmation. Whatever the reason, Freddy made a choice. He would help Gregory escape, but escape wouldn't be simple. The front doors required a special access level to open, level 7 security clearance, and Gregory was just a kid with no credentials at all. He'd need to acquire the proper permissions, which meant embarking on a journey through the Pizzaplex's various attractions, completing objectives that would gradually upgrade his security access. And he'd need to do it while avoiding the other animatronics, whose friendly daytime personas had been replaced by something far more aggressive in the dark. Glamrock Chica stalked the building with her cupcake companion, no longer the cheerful performer, but a relentless hunter who'd corner Gregory in the kitchen and other locations, drawn by noise and movement. Roxanne Wolf patrolled with her enhanced optics, able to see through walls and spot Gregory from impressive distances. Her narcissistic personality from the daytime shows twisted into something predatory as she taunted him about being nothing, being nobody, while she hunted. Montgomery Gator, the newest addition to the band, brought raw aggression to the pursuit, charging through gates and smashing through barriers in his single-minded determination to capture the intruder. Each of them had been compromised, infected by something that drove them to hunt Gregory with mechanical precision and supernatural persistence. And then there was the daycare attendant, split between the playful but rule-obsessed sun, who demanded the lights stay on, and the sinister moon, who emerged when darkness fell, patrolling with music box melodies and grabbing Gregory the moment he stepped into shadow. There was DJ Music Man, the massive spider-like animatronic in the Faz card, whose music could turn deadly when the lights went out. There were the STAFF bots, the small robot workers who'd been helpful during business hours, but now reported Gregory's location whenever they spotted him. Music men who'd pop out of vents at the worst possible moments. And lurking in the background, appearing on monitors and in brief glimpses, there was Vanny. Vanny was the true mystery, the true threat that drove everything else. A figure in a homemade white rabbit costume, stitched together with deliberate care, complete with a mask featuring a wide grin, red glowing eyes, and long floppy ears. She moved through the Pizzaplex with an unsettling combination of playfulness and menace, sometimes skipping like a child, sometimes moving with predatory intent, always accompanied by a glitchy visual effect that marked her as something wrong, something that didn't belong in the bright, clean world Fazbear Entertainment had built. She'd appear on security monitors, broadcast herself into Lost and Found after Vanessa captured Gregory the first time, dance in the recharge stations at 1 in the morning while Freddy couldn't see her. She was hunting Gregory too, but unlike the animatronics who'd turn him over to Vanessa, Vanny's intentions seemed far more sinister. The connection between Vanny and Vanessa was obvious from the start, even before the game explicitly confirmed it. They were never in the same place at the same time. When Vanessa appeared on camera, Vanny was absent. When Vanny made her appearances, Vanessa was nowhere to be found. Their voices, while different, shared similar patterns, and most tellingly, Vanessa's behavior was erratic, shifting between genuine concern for Gregory's safety and determined pursuit of him, as if two different minds were fighting for control of one body. Gregory's journey through the night forced him to dismantle the other Glamrocks to upgrade Freddy. He'd lure Chica into a trash compactor, crushing her and claiming her voice box, which Freddy needed to access certain doors. He'd shatter Roxy in a collision with a go-kart, leaving her blind and sobbing about her looks being ruined, but taking her eyes for Freddy to see through walls. He'd confront Monty at his golf course, leaving him shattered and taking his clawed hands for Freddy to use. Each upgrade made Freddy more capable. Each one brought them closer to having what they needed to escape. But each one also came at the cost of destroying what had been, underneath the corruption, innocent performers. The corruption came from somewhere, from someone. And as Gregory collected security badges and upgraded Freddy, as he discovered the retro CDs scattered throughout the complex containing therapy session recordings, as he pieced together the mysteries of the Pizzaplex through messages and emails left on computer terminals, a picture started to emerge. This building wasn't just haunted by past tragedies built into its foundation. It was being actively corrupted by something in the present, something digital, something that had infected Vanessa and turned her into Vanny, something that was trying to use the Pizzaplex for a darker purpose than entertainment. And then 6 in the morning arrived. The longest night Gregory had probably ever experienced came to an end. The front doors were unlocked. Escape was possible. But escape in what form? That's where the 6 endings diverge, where the paths split based on choices Gregory had made and would make in those final moments. The 6 paths, understanding the ending's security breach, presented its endings not as a linear progression, but as a branching tree of possibilities, each one contingent on different conditions being met, different choices being made. The game rated these endings on a star system, from 1 star to 3 stars, seemingly indicating their quality or completeness. A 1-star ending suggested a bad outcome, incomplete resolution. 2 stars implied something better, but still lacking. 3 stars should have indicated the best possible conclusion, the most complete resolution to the night's events. But as the community would discover, stars weren't the whole story. The ending labeled as canon in the game files, the burn trap ending, wasn't actually the one that happened. The 3-star ending, the hardest to achieve and most elaborate in its requirements, turned out to be the true conclusion. This confusion would persist for years until Ruin finally clarified things definitively. Let's walk through each ending in turn, from the simplest to the most complex, understanding what happens in each scenario and what it reveals about the characters and the world they inhabit. We'll start with the easiest ending to achieve, the one that requires the least effort from the player, but results in the darkest outcome for Gregory. The bad ending, leaving alone. This ending requires nothing special. When 6 in the morning arrives and the front doors unlock, Gregory is presented with a choice on the main stage: leave or stay. Choose to leave, and this is what happens. Gregory simply walks out. The short sequence shows him emerging from the Pizzaplex's front entrance alone, stepping out into the cold winter morning. There's no celebration, no sense of relief. The scene is somber, grey, rain beginning to fall as Gregory walks away from the building. He's crying, tears streaming down his face as he departs. The implication is clear. He's leaving Freddy behind. The animatronic who protected him, who became his guardian and friend through the night, is trapped inside. Gregory is safe, but he's alone. The ending doesn't stop there. It fast-forwards some amount of time, showing Gregory asleep in a cardboard box in a filthy alley, using crumpled newspaper as a blanket against the cold. The camera zooms in on one of the newspaper pages, revealing a headline about continued disappearances around the Pizzaplex, suggesting that whatever was happening there during Gregory's night has continued unchecked. He escaped, but he accomplished nothing else. No one was saved. No mystery was solved. The horror continues. And then, in the final shot, Vanny's shadow falls across the box. The white rabbit found him. Perhaps she always knew where he'd go. Perhaps she followed him. Perhaps she simply searched until she found the homeless child who disrupted her plans. But she found him. The screen cuts to black before we see what happens next, but the implication is unavoidable. Gregory's escape was temporary. Whatever fate Vanny had planned for him during the night catches up to him eventually. This ending earned its 1-star rating for good reason. It's the worst possible outcome. Gregory survives the night but accomplishes nothing, saves no one, and ultimately falls victim to Vanny anyway. It's the ending you get for taking the easy way out, for prioritizing immediate safety over solving the deeper problems. The game essentially punishes players for choosing the simple option, making it clear that leaving without investigating, without confronting the mysteries lurking beneath the Pizzaplex's cheerful surface, was never really an escape at all. This ending also reveals something important about Gregory's circumstances. The cardboard box, the newspaper blanket, the alley. Gregory is homeless. He has nowhere to go, no parents to return to, no safe place waiting for him outside the Pizzaplex. This detail becomes important when considering the other endings, when understanding why Gregory might choose to stay and investigate rather than simply flee. He's not just trying to escape the building. He's trying to find something, accomplish something, because the world outside offers him nothing. It's bleak, it's hopeless, and thankfully, it's not canon. But it serves an important narrative purpose, establishing the baseline of what happens if Gregory doesn't fully engage with the Pizzaplex's mysteries, if he doesn't push deeper into the building's secrets. It shows us what the stakes really are. Leaving isn't enough. Something more is required. The loading dock escape. The good ending. The next step up from simply walking out the front door comes when Gregory chooses to stay past 6 in the morning and makes progress toward a proper escape. This ending requires some work. Gregory needs to achieve level 7 security clearance, the highest level available, which means completing several major objectives throughout the night. He needs to defeat the various animatronics, claiming their parts for Freddy. He needs to access restricted areas and bypass security measures. It's not an easy path, but it's more complete than simply leaving when the doors unlock. With level 7 clearance, Gregory can access the loading docks in the basement level of the Pizzaplex. This area, normally restricted to delivery trucks and freight operations, contains a door that leads outside. But more importantly, it contains something else, a van. The ending plays out with Gregory and Freddy making their way through the loading docks and out into the underground garage area. They find an old van, its battery dead but still functional enough to potentially start if they can get power to it. Freddy, ever the problem solver, has a solution. He can use his own battery to jumpstart the vehicle. It will deactivate him, but it will give Gregory the transportation he needs to truly escape, to get far away from the Pizzaplex and whatever dangers lurk within its walls. The scene unfolds with Freddy connecting himself to the van, transferring his power to the dead vehicle. Sparks fly, connections are made. The van roars to life as Freddy's systems shut down, his eyes dimming. His voice cutting off mid-sentence as he tells Gregory he's proud of him, that he's a superstar. The animatronic slumps, deactivated but not destroyed, merely sleeping. But Gregory doesn't leave him. In a touching moment of loyalty, Gregory works on Freddy, using tools from the van to restore power to the bear. It takes time, but eventually Freddy reboots, his systems coming back online. His first words are concern for Gregory, asking if he's okay, if they made it out. Gregory confirms they did. They're safe. They're together. The final shot shows them sitting on a hillside somewhere far from the Pizzaplex, the building visible in the distance, the sun rising over the landscape. It's peaceful. It's hopeful. Gregory and Freddy watch the sunrise together, both of them having survived the night, having escaped, having found in each other something like family. This ending earned 2 stars, a notable improvement over the 1-star bad ending. Gregory doesn't just survive, he saves Freddy too. They escape together. No one is left behind. The bond they formed during the night, the relationship between the lost child and the protective animatronic, is preserved. There's genuine warmth to this conclusion, a sense of earned victory after hours of survival horror gameplay. But there's also an incompleteness to it. They escaped. But what about Vanessa? What about Vanny? The ending doesn't address the human element of the Pizzaplex's corruption. The White Rabbit who hunted Gregory through the night is still there, still active, still carrying out whatever dark purpose drives her. The disappearances mentioned in the Bad Endings newspaper will presumably continue. The other animatronics, damaged and corrupted, remain in the building. Nothing was truly resolved. Gregory and Freddy found safety, but they didn't stop the horror. They only escaped it. Still, this is a victory. A small one, perhaps incomplete, but genuine nonetheless. Gregory and Freddy survived together. That means something. That matters. And in the dark world of Five Nights at Freddy's, where so many stories end in tragedy, a sunrise on a hillside with a friend beside you is no small achievement. The unmasked ending, fire and revelation. This ending introduces more complexity, more tragedy, and more revelation. It requires specific preparations throughout the night and ends with both triumph and loss. To achieve this ending, Gregory needs to collect all 6 Golden Freddy plushies scattered throughout the Pizzaplex. These collectibles unlock access to the prize counter's emergency exit, a fire escape that leads to the building's roof. When 6 in the morning arrives and Gregory chooses to stay rather than leave, this becomes another possible path. The sequence begins with Freddy setting fires throughout the Pizzaplex. The why of this is never fully explained, but the implication seems to be that burning the building is the only way to truly stop whatever's happening there, to cleanse the location of its corruption, Flames spread through the complex as Gregory makes his way to the roof via the emergency exit, with Freddy providing cover and support, even as the building burns around them. On the roof, Gregory emerges into the cold morning air. Smoke rising from below, the pizzaplex beginning to collapse under the fire's assault, and waiting for him on the roof is Vanny. The white rabbit who hunted him all night has him cornered now on top of a burning building with nowhere to run. She approaches, laughing, ready to finish what she started. But Freddy bursts through onto the roof, placing himself between Gregory and Vanny. For a moment, there's a standoff. Then a Freddy charges, grabbing Vanny and tackling her toward the roof's edge. She struggles, but the animatronic bear is too strong, too determined to protect Gregory at any cost. They go over together, plummeting from the roof toward the ground far below. Gregory rushes to the edge, looking down in horror. Below, Freddy and Vanny lie motionless from the fall. Gregory scrambles down, somehow making it to ground level through the chaos of the burning building. He reaches Vanny's body first and does what he's perhaps been wanting to do all night. He removes the mask. Underneath, as many players suspected, is Vanessa. The security guard and the white rabbit were the same person all along. Her face is visible now, blonde hair splayed out, the rabbit costume torn and burned. She's dead or dying from the fall, sacrificed in Freddy's desperate move to save Gregory. But then something strange happens. The camera pans up, back to the roof. Standing there, looking down at the scene, is Vanessa again. The same face, the same uniform, the same blonde hair in a ponytail. She's looking down at her own body on the ground below, or at Vanny's body, and the expression on her face is one of grief and confusion. This double image, this appearance of Vanessa in two places at once, sparked immense debate in the community. What does it mean? Some theorized Vanessa and Vanny were two separate people who just happened to look alike, perhaps twins separated as children. Others suggested the Vanessa on the roof was a ghost, a spirit freed from Vanny's body by death. Still others thought it represented Vanessa's consciousness, freed from whatever possession or corruption had created Vanny, watching her former self's demise with mixed emotions. The ending leaves these questions unanswered. Gregory survives, but at tremendous cost. Freddy is presumably destroyed or severely damaged from the fall. Vanny is dead. The pizzaplex is burning. And Vanessa, whether ghost or survivor or something else entirely, is left behind on the roof of the burning building. This ending earned 2 stars, same as the loading dock escape, suggesting it was neither better nor worse in the game's estimation, just different. It solves the Vanny problem, permanently stopping the white rabbit's hunting, but it does so through death rather than redemption. There's no saving Vanessa, no freeing her from whatever corrupted her. There's only the finality of her falling from the roof and the mystery of why she appears to be in 2 places at once. And like the loading dock ending, there's an incompleteness here. Gregory survived again, and this time he stopped Vanny, but he didn't save her. He didn't uncover the full truth of what was happening. He didn't address the underground secrets or the deeper corruption. He responded to the immediate threat with fire and force, and while it worked, while it ended Vanny's hunting, it left many questions unanswered and destroyed a building that, for all its corruption, still contained pieces of Fazbear Entertainment's history. The burn trap ending. Descent into darkness. Now we come to the ending that was labeled canon in the game's files, the one that seemed for a time to be the true conclusion to Gregory's night. This is the most elaborate ending, requiring the most preparation and offering the most lore revelations. It's also the ending that, as we'll discuss later, turned out not to be what actually happened, creating immense confusion in the community until Ruin clarified things. To access this ending, Gregory needs to achieve level 7 security clearance and fully upgrade Freddy with parts from all 3 other glam rocks. He needs Roxy's eyes, Chica's voice box, and Monty's claws, making Freddy into a super animatronic capable of seeing through walls, accessing voice-locked doors, and breaking through chain-link gates. Only then can Gregory access the old elevator that descends below even the basement levels, down into the true depths beneath the Pizzaplex. The elevator descends far, far deeper than should be possible for a building of this size. It's not going to a sub-basement or service level. It's descending through bedrock, through the remains of old structures, down to a place that was deliberately buried and forgotten. When the doors open, Gregory and Freddy step out into somewhere that shouldn't exist. The ruins of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place. This is the location from Pizzeria Simulator, the building Henry Emily used for his final gambit, where he gathered the haunted animatronics and set them ablaze in an attempt to end the cycle of tragedy once and for all. That fire happened decades ago in the timeline. The building should have been completely destroyed, reduced to ash and rubble. Instead, here it is, preserved beneath the Pizzaplex, like an archaeological site, its corridors and rooms still partially intact despite the fire damage and structural collapse. Gregory and Freddy navigate through these ruins, past melted arcade machines and collapsed walls, through passages that trigger the animatronics' memories of this place, past vent systems and old offices that Henry once used to run his elaborate trap. And then they find something that shouldn't be there, something that should have been destroyed in Henry's fire, but somehow survived. A charging station, still active, still drawing power. And in that charging station, connected by wires and cables, is a figure that looks disturbingly familiar. At first glance, it resembles Springtrap, the rotting Spring Bonnie suit that William Afton's corpse had been trapped inside. But this version is different. It's been rebuilt, repaired, its suit parts patched together from various sources, including what appeared to be pieces of glam rock Bonnie, the missing member of the main stage band. The human remains inside are more visible, more decayed, more horrifying, and its eyes glow with purple light, the signature color of William Afton's presence throughout the franchise. The game files name this entity Burn Trap, a combination of burnt and trap, referencing both the fire that should have killed Afton and the trap suit he's permanently fused with. Materials from the Pizzeria Simulator fire were apparently scavenged and rebuilt into this new form. Whether this truly represents William Afton's consciousness persisting somehow, or whether it's actually connected to the mimic endoskeleton, as many fans theorize based on later evidence, remains a subject of debate. The figure's eyes glow with purple light, the signature color associated with Afton's presence throughout the franchise, which initially suggested his return. Burntrap awakens as Gregory and Freddy enter its lair. The boss fight begins. It's a desperate battle of survival, with Gregory hiding inside Freddy and using the bear's upgraded abilities to evade Burntrap's attacks while hitting switches to activate incinerators throughout the room. Attempting to burn this thing the way Henry tried to burn everything in Pizzeria Simulator. But the fight is complicated by the other animatronics. Chica and Roxy, damaged but still functional, still corrupted, respond to some signal from Burntrap and converge on the underground location, trying to kill Gregory even as he fights their apparent master. And then there's the other presence in the ruins, the blob, or tangle, depending on which name you prefer. It appears first as tentacles, black cables and wires that snake through vents and grates, trying to grab Gregory and drag him away. But when Gregory finally succeeds in activating all the incinerators, when flames engulf Burntrap and the creature tries to escape its chamber, the full form of the blob emerges. It's massive, an amalgamation of old animatronic parts held together by masses of wires and cables. The head appears to be Funtime Freddy's mask, but with empty black eyes and red glowing pupils. The body is a writhing mass of tentacles and cables, and embedded throughout that mass are parts of other animatronics. Circus Baby's face, the puppet's mask, Chica's head, Bonnie's guitar, Mangle's components, pieces of what appear to be countless other animatronics from throughout Fazbear Entertainment's history, all merged together into this enormous, horrifying entity. The blob drops from the ceiling onto Burntrap as the figure tries to escape the flames. Its tentacles wrap around the burning form, dragging it back, pulling it up toward the ceiling. Burntrap struggles, reaching out, trying to break free, but the blob's grip appears absolute. The two entities disappear into the darkness above, leaving Gregory and Freddy to escape the burning ruins. Whether the blob was trying to kill Burntrap, imprison it, or had some other purpose remains unclear, as this confrontation exists only in an ending that didn't actually occur. The final scene shows them emerging from the Pizzaplex as the building collapses behind them, sitting together on a hillside watching the destruction, similar to the Loading Dock ending, but with the knowledge that they didn't just escape. They fought and defeated something ancient and evil in the process. This ending was labeled as the canon ending in the game files, suggesting it was intended to be the true conclusion, the one that actually happened. It tied Security Breach back to Pizzeria Simulator, revealing that Henry's sacrifice didn't end things after all, that William Afton had somehow survived even that final fire. It introduced the blob as a new major entity, a collection of all the haunted animatronics that should have been freed by Henry's flames, but instead merged into something new. It was elaborate, cinematic, and packed with lore implications. It was also, as we now know from Ruins Revelations, not what actually happened during Gregory's night at the Pizzaplex. Despite being labeled canon in the files, Ruin would later reveal that it was just another possibility, another path not taken. Gregory never descended into those ruins during his real night. He never fought Burntrap. The blob never dragged this figure away. All of it was either a dream Gregory had later, a possibility he imagined, or perhaps something he drew in his comics as he processed the trauma of what really happened. The evidence Ruin provided makes it clear that while this ending exists in the game, it didn't occur in the actual timeline. But before we get to that revelation and the evidence Ruin presented, there's one more ending to discuss. The ending that was hidden, that required the most specific sequence of actions to unlock, that didn't have canon in its file name, but turned out to be the true conclusion after all. The Princess Quest ending. The true path of all Security Breach's endings. This one required the most from players. Not just upgrading Freddy, not just reaching level 7 clearance, but discovering and completing 3 separate Princess Quest arcade games scattered throughout the Pizzaplex, hidden away in different locations, each one a complete minigame in its own right. This wasn't something you'd stumble into by accident. This required exploration, observation, remembering where you'd seen these cabinets, and then returning to each one with the specific tools or access permissions needed to actually play them. The first Princess Quest machine was located in the Glamrock Beauty Salon, Roxy's personal space where she preened and practiced her self-affirmations before shows. The salon itself was tucked away behind Roxy Raceway, easy to miss if you weren't specifically exploring every corner of the complex. Inside the salon, past the main vanity area with its mirrors and makeup stations, there was a back storage room filled with cleaning supplies and maintenance equipment. And there, incongruous among the mops and shelving units, stood an old-style arcade cabinet with Princess Quest displayed on its screen in simple pixelated graphics. Playing the first game introduced players to the format. You controlled a knight character, viewed from a top-down perspective reminiscent of early Zelda games or classic adventure titles. The knight moved through a castle environment, solving simple puzzles, avoiding enemies, collecting keys to unlock doors. The art style was deliberately retro, 8-bit graphics that wouldn't have looked out of place in an actual 1980s arcade. But the enemies, those were the tell. Glitchy rabbit figures that moved erratically, their forms distorting and fragmenting as they pursued the knight. Anyone who'd played Help Wanted would recognize them as corrupted versions of Glitchtrap, the Spring Bonnie virus. The first game's challenge wasn't particularly difficult once you understood the mechanics. Move through rooms, avoid or defeat enemies with your sword, solve environmental puzzles that blocked progress. The game built to a climax, where the knight confronted a larger rabbit boss, a massive glitching entity that required pattern recognition and timing to defeat. Beating it rewarded players with a victory screen, showing the knight standing triumphant, but also a clear indication that this was just the first chapter of a longer story. The princess you were presumably trying to save remained imprisoned somewhere in the digital realm. The second Princess Quest machine was harder to find. It was located in the Fazcard, DJ Music Man's domain, a massive room filled with arcade cabinets and prize games and ticket dispensers. But the second Princess Quest wasn't just sitting among the other games. It was in a basement level beneath the Fazcard, accessible only through a specific sequence of actions. You had to deactivate DJ Music Man first, shutting down his music to prevent his aggressive patrolling. Then, you had to find and access a maintenance shaft that led down beneath the main arcade floor into a service area where the building's electrical systems were housed. Down there, among the circuit breakers and cable bundles, someone had installed the second Princess Quest cabinet, as if hiding it from casual discovery. The second game increased the difficulty substantially. The castle environment was larger, more maze-like. The enemies were more aggressive and appeared in greater numbers. New puzzle elements were introduced requiring more complex solutions. But the core narrative remained consistent. The knight was still fighting through glitch-infected digital spaces, still pursuing the imprisoned princess, still battling rabbit-shaped corruptions that seemed to represent Glitchtrap's influence spreading through whatever system these games represented. This second game also introduced more explicit story elements. Text boxes would occasionally appear, fragments of dialogue or narration that suggested the princess was aware of the knight's efforts, that she was trying to help from within her prison, that she was fighting her own battle in parallel with the knight's quest. The implication was growing clearer. This wasn't just a random arcade game. It was a representation of Vanessa's situation, trapped within her own mind by Glitchtrap's corruption. with Gregory's actions in the physical pizzaplex somehow mirroring or influencing this digital battle for her consciousness. Beating the second game's final boss, another glitchy rabbit entity even larger and more aggressive than the first games, brought players another victory screen. The knight had made progress, had penetrated deeper into the corrupted castle, but the princess remained imprisoned. The story wasn't over. There was one more game to complete. Finding the third Princess Quest cabinet required accessing Vanny's secret lair, and that required multiple specific conditions to be met. First, players had to discover the lair's existence during the phaser blast section of the game, finding a vent that led up into a hidden space above the laser tag arena. Inside that space, Vanny had created a base of operations, a room decorated with disturbing imagery, childlike drawings mixed with sinister implications, newspaper clippings about the pizzaplex's disappearances, and computer equipment that suggested she was monitoring security systems and planning something terrible. The third Princess Quest cabinet sat in this lair, but you couldn't play it during the regular phaser blast mission. You had to return during the end game, after 6 in the morning, after choosing to stay rather than leave. The endgame sequence opened new paths through the pizzaplex, and one of those paths led back to Vanny's lair, where the final game waited. Princess Quest 3 was the most challenging installment by far. The castle had become almost unnavigable, its corridors twisted and glitching constantly, its enemies overwhelming in their numbers and aggression. The knight had to fight through waves of corruption, solve puzzles that required perfect timing and positioning, navigate maze sections that seemed deliberately designed to disorient players. This wasn't just harder. This was testing whether players truly understood the game's mechanics and were committed enough to push through significant frustration to reach the end. But the story payoff was worth it. As the knight progressed through Princess Quest 3, the fragmented dialogue became more frequent and more coherent. The princess was speaking directly to the player now, or to the knight as the player's avatar, explaining that she'd been trapped here by something that had taken over her mind, that she'd been fighting from within, while the knight fought from without, that together they might be able to break the prison and end the corruption. The final boss of Princess Quest 3 was the largest rabbit entity yet, a massive glitching monster that filled much of the screen, its form barely holding together as it attacked with patterns that combined elements from all the previous boss fights, while adding new complications. Defeating it required using everything players had learned across all 3 games, maintaining perfect focus while dodging attacks and finding openings to strike back. And when that final blow landed, when the boss shattered into pixels and dissolved, the game's ending played out. The knight reached the princess's cell at last, broke down the door, and freed her. The 2 figures stood together for a moment in a peaceful garden environment, sunlight streaming down, corruption purged. Then the screen displayed a simple message: the end, victory, freedom, the quest complete. But completing the game wasn't just a narrative achievement in the digital space. It had real effects in the physical pizzaplex. The moment Gregory completed Princess Quest 3, the very instant that victory screen appeared, something changed in the building around him. The constant hum of hostile systems suddenly stopped. The STAFF bots that had been stalking him through the night, reporting his position, trying to capture him, all deactivated simultaneously. They dropped where they stood, their eyes going dark, their limbs going limp. The pizzaplex's aggressive security measures ceased. The building went from hostile to neutral in an instant. Vanny, wherever she was in the building, ceased to exist as a separate entity. The Vanny persona, the white rabbit that had hunted Gregory with childlike glee and murderous intent, simply ended. Vanessa's mind was whole again. Glitchtrap's hold broken, the split personality dissolved. She wouldn't remember everything Vanny had done, the dissociative state protecting her from the worst memories, but she would remember enough to know something terrible had been controlling her and was now gone. The cutscene that followed showed Gregory emerging from Vanny's lair and making his way through a suddenly quieter pizzaplex. No animatronics pursued him. No bots blocked his path. He made his way to the prize counter area, and there, scattered across the floor near the fire escape exit, he found Vanny's costume. The white rabbit suit lay in pieces. The mask, with its red eyes and stitched grin, sitting separate from the body. It looked almost peaceful, this costume that had been so menacing in motion, without Vanessa inside it, without Glitchtrap animating it. It was just fabric and foam, harmless. And then Vanessa appeared, stepping out from behind the counter. She wasn't stalking or hunting. She was walking normally, moving like a person rather than a predator. Her expression was confused, disoriented, as if waking from a terrible dream she couldn't quite remember. She looked at Gregory, this child she'd been chasing all night, and for the first time her eyes were clear, unclouded by Glitchtrap's influence or Vanny's murderous intent. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice uncertain. Simple words, but profound given the context. She'd spent the night trying to capture him, or part of her had, while another part presumably fought from within to prevent worse outcomes. Now that part was all that remained, the real Vanessa, worried about the child she'd been pursuing. Gregory nodded, not trusting his voice. He knew what needed to happen next. Freddy's body was somewhere in the building, torn apart by STAFF bots in those final moments before the deactivation. They needed to find his head, the only part still functional, still conscious. They needed to get out of this building before anything else went wrong, before whatever temporary peace the completed Princess Quest games had brought could be disrupted. Together, Vanessa and Gregory searched the pizzaplex. The security guard knew the building better than anyone, knew where the bots would have taken Freddy after their attack. They found him in parts and service, or what remained of him. His body had been thoroughly dismantled, parts scattered, endoskeleton broken, but his head somehow remained intact. His eyes lit up when he saw them approaching, his voice weak but relieved. "Gregory, you did it. You're safe, we're safe." Freddy's voice carried such genuine happiness despite his severely damaged state. He'd protected Gregory through the entire night, and now Gregory had saved not just himself, but Vanessa too, had broken the corruption that had turned the pizzaplex into a hunting ground. Vanessa carefully disconnected Freddy's head from the destroyed body, ensuring the power supply remained stable, that his consciousness wouldn't be lost. "I can fix him," she said, though whether she meant repair his body or just maintain his head was unclear. "I know people. I can get parts. We'll figure it out." Gregory picked up Freddy's head, holding it carefully. It was heavier than expected, but not impossibly so. The animatronic bear's eyes looked up at him with something like affection, with pride. "You're my superstar," Freddy said softly, reprising his catchphrase, but this time it carried weight, genuine emotion, rather than programmed response. The three of them made their way to the front entrance. The doors that had been locked all night now opened freely, Vanessa's security credentials working without opposition. the building systems no longer fighting them. They stepped out into cold morning air, into dawn light that painted the parking lot in shades of orange and pink. Behind them, the Pizzaplex stood silent and dark, no longer the bright, cheerful entertainment complex, but not quite abandoned yet either. Just sleeping, waiting to see what would come next. Vanessa led them to her car, an old sedan parked in the employee section. She placed Freddy's head carefully in the passenger seat, securing it with the seatbelt, an absurd image that almost made Gregory laugh despite everything. The security guard looked at Gregory then, really looked at him, seeing him properly for the first time. "You don't have anywhere to go, do you?" she asked gently, understanding implicit in her tone. She'd seen his file, or the lack of one. She knew he was a child alone in the world, no parents listed, no home address, no safety net. Gregory shook his head. He'd spent time in the cardboard box, in the alleys, dodging social services and trying to stay invisible. The Pizzaplex had seemed like a good place to hide, warm and dry with food available if you were clever. He'd never expected it to become a nightmare. He'd never expected to find something like family in the middle of that nightmare. "Well," Vanessa said, opening the back door for him, "you do now. We'll figure this out together, all three of us." The post-credits scene, the one that confirmed this ending's warmth and hope, showed them weeks or maybe months later. They were sitting on a hillside overlooking the city, the Pizzaplex, visible in the distance, but far enough away that it seemed almost unreal, almost like something from a dream. Gregory and Vanessa sat on a blanket, eating ice cream despite the cool weather. Freddy's head, now housed in a custom stand that Vanessa had apparently built or acquired, rested between them, his voice cheerful as he commented on the view. "This is nice," Freddy said simply. "Very nice. Gregory, would you like to hear about the stars? I have an astronomy program in my database." "Maybe later," Gregory replied, smiling. For the first time in probably years, he felt safe. Genuinely safe. Not hiding in a vent safe or sneaking through shadows safe, but protected, cared for, wanted. Vanessa watched them both, this strange little family she'd somehow acquired. A homeless child, an animatronic's severed head, and a security guard recovering from digital possession and dissociative murder. Not exactly traditional, but perhaps that was fine. Perhaps traditional was overrated. Perhaps what mattered was that they'd survived, they'd saved each other, and they were choosing to stay together. The scene faded on that image, on three figures watching the sunset, on the promise of tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow stretching ahead of them. Not perfect, not without complications. Vanessa would need therapy, real therapy, to process what had been done to her and what she'd done while controlled. Gregory would need time to learn to trust stability, to believe this safety wouldn't be yanked away. Freddy would need a new body eventually, or at least better mounting hardware for his head. There would be questions about the Pizzaplex, investigations, concerns about what happened that night. But they'd face those challenges together. That was the point. That was what made this ending the best one. The 3-star conclusion that saved everyone who could be saved and offered hope for healing, rather than just survival. This ending received 3 stars, the highest rating. And in retrospect, it's clear the game was trying to tell players this was special. This was the one that mattered most. But for a long time, despite the star rating, it wasn't clear that it was also the canon outcome. The file names didn't explicitly label it as such. The elaborate burn trap ending seemed more conclusive, more tied to the series' overarching narrative. This ending felt smaller, more personal, less bombastic, but personal was precisely what made it matter. This was the ending that saved everyone who could be saved. Gregory escaped without compromising his moral integrity or leaving friends behind. Freddy survived, if not intact, then at least conscious and cared for, maintained by someone who genuinely valued him rather than seeing him as just a machine. And Vanessa was freed from Glitchtrap's control, given a chance to heal from whatever that entity had done to her, given a chance to be herself again and to help raise the homeless child who'd stumbled into the pizzaplex and changed everything. The Princess Quest ending was quieter than the others. No boss fight with burning and tentacles, no dramatic fall from a roof with explosions, no dramatic van escape, no descent into buried ruins to confront Afton's latest form. Just 3 people, 2 human and 1 animatronic, leaving a building together and starting to build something like a normal life in the aftermath of horror. In a franchise defined by tragedy, by children dying and souls being trapped and families being destroyed across decades, this ending offered something revolutionary, genuine healing, not just escaping the horror, but overcoming it, not just surviving, but growing beyond the trauma. Gregory helped someone rather than just helping himself. Vanessa was saved rather than killed or abandoned to her fate. Freddy remained conscious and cared for rather than destroyed or left behind. They became a family, dysfunctional and strange, and built from broken pieces, but a family nonetheless. And when Ruin released in July 2023, bringing Cassie into the Ruin Pizzaplex months after Gregory's night, it would become abundantly clear that this quiet, personal 3-star ending was the one that actually happened. The burn trap fight never occurred. The roof confrontation didn't happen. Gregory didn't walk out alone to eventually be found by Vanny. He didn't steal a van. He completed the Princess Quest games, freed Vanessa, and left with her and Freddy's head, starting a new life away from the Pizzaplex. But to understand why we know that now, to understand how Ruin confirmed it beyond any doubt, we need to first understand some other things. We need to understand who Vanessa really was before she became Vanny. What made her vulnerable to Glitchtrap's corruption? We need to understand what Glitchtrap actually is, where it came from, whether it truly is William Afton or something else wearing his face. We need to understand the difference between Afton's legacy and the new threat that was using that legacy as a disguise. We need to understand the nature of the corruption that had spread through the Pizzaplex and why completing 3 arcade games could purge it where physical confrontation would have failed. Let's start with Vanessa, the woman behind the rabbit mask, the person whose mind became a battlefield between herself and something that wanted to use her hands for murder. Vanessa, the reluctant follower, the therapy tapes scattered throughout the Pizzaplex as collectibles told a story, a fragmented narrative that required players to gather all 16 CDs and piece together their contents in the proper order to understand what had happened to Vanessa, how she'd become Vanny, and what had led her to this point. These weren't easy to find, hidden in obscure corners of the massive complex, sometimes requiring specific upgrades or access levels to reach. But they were essential to understanding not just Vanessa's story, but the entire nature of the threat facing the Pizzaplex. Vanessa A, last name starting with A, though never fully revealed in-game, was 23 years old at the time of Security Breach's events, making her birth year sometime around 2007, assuming the game takes place in the early 2030s as various sources suggest. This made her young, barely into adulthood, vulnerable in ways that someone older and more experienced might not have been. She'd been a beta tester for Fazbear Entertainment's VR project, the Freddy Fazbear virtual experience that players experienced in Help Wanted. During that testing, she'd encountered something that shouldn't have been in the game: Glitchtrap, a digital entity that appeared as a figure in a Spring Bonnie costume, beckoning players, trying to merge with them, attempting to escape the digital world by possessing someone in the real world. Before Glitchtrap corrupted her, before everything went wrong, Vanessa had a history, a past that the therapy tapes gradually reveal through sessions with multiple therapists, each recording providing pieces of a larger puzzle. The sessions are numbered in a specific format, with the first 2 digits representing the tape number, the next 2 representing the client number, either 71 for Vanessa or 46 for the mysterious second client, and the final 2 representing the session number for that particular client. This formatting becomes important when trying to understand the timeline and the relationship between the 2 therapy tracks. Vanessa's earliest memories, discussed in her therapy sessions, centered around her parents' divorce. Not an amicable separation, but a bitter, toxic dissolution of a marriage that had likely been troubled for years before reaching its breaking point. Her father's name was Bill, revealed in one of the sessions, a man who the tapes paint as controlling, manipulative, and deeply selfish. When the divorce proceedings began, when custody of young Vanessa became the central battleground, Bill had a plan to ensure he won. He coached Vanessa to lie in court. The therapy tapes never specify exactly what lie she told, whether it was about her mother's parenting ability, her home environment, possible abuse or neglect that never happened. But whatever the lie was, it was substantial enough that it gave Bill the ammunition he needed to win full custody. Vanessa was perhaps 7 or 8 years old when this happened, young enough that her testimony would be taken seriously, young enough to be manipulated by her father's promises or threats, old enough to understand on some level that what she was doing was wrong. The custody hearing went Bill's way. Vanessa was placed with him full time, her contact with her mother restricted or eliminated entirely. And Bill, having won his prize, proceeded to create an environment of control and emotional abuse. The therapy tapes describe him as someone who isolated Vanessa from external influences, who monitored her activities constantly, who demanded obedience and punished independence. He wasn't physically abusive, at least not in ways the tapes mention, but the psychological damage was profound and lasting. Growing up under Bill's control created in Vanessa a tendency toward compartmentalization, toward separating parts of her experience into different mental boxes to cope with the contradictions and pain. She learned to be one person for her father, compliant and obedient, while keeping another part of herself hidden away, protected from his manipulation. She learned to wall off the guilt about lying in court, to separate that memory from her daily functioning because facing it directly was too painful. These coping mechanisms, developed to survive childhood trauma, would make her particularly vulnerable to what Glitchtrap would eventually do to her. As Vanessa grew older and eventually aged out of Bill's direct control, she sought to build a life separate from him. The therapy tapes suggest she went to college, studied something computer-related, given her eventual work as a beta tester, and tried to create distance from her past. But the damage persisted. She struggled with severe anxiety, the kind that made simple social interactions exhausting, that created constant worry about how others perceived her. That manifested in physical symptoms like sleep problems and difficulty eating. She struggled with depression, periods where nothing felt meaningful or worthwhile, where getting out of bed required immense effort. Her romantic life appeared minimal or non-existent based on the therapy discussions. She had co-workers but few real friends, with one email from Special Delivery mentioning Louise, a colleague who described her fondly, but noted she seemed lonely despite her bright personality. She threw herself into her work, perhaps as a way of proving her worth, perhaps as a distraction from the void in her personal life. This dedication to work, this need to be useful and valued, made her an ideal employee but also made her vulnerable to exploitation. When Fazbear Entertainment needed beta testers for their VR experience, Vanessa volunteered or was recruited. The pay was presumably good, the work interesting for someone with her technical background. She would put on the VR headset and test various minigames, reporting bugs and playability issues, helping refine the product before public release. It seemed like a normal job, a legitimate opportunity. She had no way of knowing that the circuit boards Fazbear had scanned to program the game's animatronic behaviors contained something extra, something malicious. The encounter with Glitchtrap in the VR world was documented through the tapes left by Tape Girl in Help Wanted. These tapes described the virus's behavior, its attempts to merge with testers, its growing presence in the virtual environment. Tape Girl had managed to resist or partially resist, had created instructions for trapping Glitchtrap inside a plushie form within the game code, turning the virus into something seemingly harmless. She left these instructions for the next tester, who based on evidence connecting the games appears to have been Vanessa, hoping they would help her deal with the digital threat. But Vanessa's attempts to follow Tape Girl's instructions didn't work as planned. Or perhaps Glitchtrap had learned from its encounter with Tape Girl and adapted its approach. Instead of being trapped in a plushie, instead of being contained and neutralized, the virus found a way to begin merging with Vanessa's consciousness. The Princess Quest minigame in Help Wanted represented this struggle, showing a princess trapped in a digital prison while something else took control of the world around her. The widely accepted interpretation is that Vanessa was that princess, fighting to maintain her sense of self while Glitchtrap's influence grew, though the game never explicitly names the princess as Vanessa. The merge wasn't instant or complete. The therapy tapes from Security Breach, which cover events after the VR project, but before Gregory's night at the Pizzaplex, show a gradual deterioration. In early sessions, Vanessa seems relatively functional if troubled. She discusses her childhood trauma, her relationship with Bill, her struggles with anxiety and depression. The therapists note her low self-esteem, her tendency toward compartmentalization, her vulnerability to manipulation. They recommend continued treatment, suggest medication adjustments, try to help her process her past so it stops controlling her present. But strange details begin appearing in later sessions. Vanessa mentions encrypted conversations, exchanges with someone she can't quite identify or explain. She talks about receiving instructions, feeling compelled to do things without understanding why. She admits to ordering materials online, fake fur and crafting supplies, though she can't explain what she plans to make with them. Her search history, which the therapy tapes reference obliquely, shows concerning patterns, queries about manipulating people, about inducing compliance, about self-compliance techniques, as if she's trying to convince herself to do something she knows is wrong. The therapists become increasingly concerned as these sessions progress. They recognize signs of possible dissociative identity disorder, of personality fragmentation that goes beyond Vanessa's childhood coping mechanisms. They suspect outside influence, some person or group manipulating her, though they can't identify who or for what purpose. They recommend more intensive treatment, possible hospitalization for evaluation. But before these recommendations can be implemented, before Vanessa can get the help she needs, the therapists start dying. The deaths are presented in the tapes as surprising, but not explicitly as murder at first. One therapist simply fails to show up for a session, and the next tape features a different therapist taking over the case. No explanation for why the change occurred. Another therapist mentions being uncomfortable, feeling watched, before that therapist too vanishes from the rotation. A later tape mentions machinery accidents, employees injured or killed in freak incidents involving automated systems. One therapist is described as being mangled by equipment, the word choice deliberately echoing the name of the mangle animatronic, suggesting these weren't really accidents at all. Someone or something was eliminating the therapists who were getting too close to understanding Vanessa's situation. Each death removed an obstacle to Glitchtrap's control, while also ensuring Vanessa's mental health continued deteriorating without proper treatment. Traumatized people without support systems are easier to manipulate, easier to control. Glitchtrap was systematically removing anyone who might interfere with its plans, while using Vanessa's access to Fazbear Entertainment systems to cover up the murders or make them look accidental. During this period, the split between Vanessa and Vanny was solidifying. Vanessa herself remained largely unaware of what was happening during the times Glitchtrap had full control. She'd experienced lost time, find herself in places without memory of how she got there, discover items in her possession that she didn't remember purchasing. The Vanny costume was created during these fugue states. Glitchtrap using Vanessa's hands to stitch together the White Rabbit outfit that would become the disguise for its physical actions in the world. The costume itself is worth examining. It's homemade, clearly not a professional mascot suit. The stitching is visible and deliberate, giving it a patchwork appearance that's both childlike and unsettling. The white fabric is stained in places, suggesting either age or that it's been used in messy situations. The mask features a wide grin with small buck teeth, long whiskers, and eyes that glow red when worn, though whether that's a built-in feature or some interaction with Glitchtrap's digital presence is unclear. There's a blue bow at the neck and pink paw pads on the hands and feet. The overall effect is of something trying to be cute and friendly but failing, the uncanny valley effect creating discomfort rather than the intended approachability. Why a rabbit costume specifically? The obvious answer is that Glitchtrap manifests as a rabbit, as Spring Bonnie, so the costume represents that digital form made physical. But there's more to it. Vanessa had requested a rabbit-themed cake for her birthday in emails found in special delivery, suggesting she had some affinity for rabbits even before Glitchtrap's influence. Perhaps the virus exploited this preference, using it as a hook to make the idea of creating the costume feel natural rather than compelled. Or perhaps Glitchtrap implanted that preference earlier in the possession process, preparing Vanessa's mind to accept the costume as her own choice. By the time Gregory's night at the Pizzaplex occurred, Vanessa had been living with the split personality for months. She'd been transferred from the Fazbear Funtime service to a security guard position at the Pizzaplex, possibly to give her official access to the building's systems, possibly because working night shifts in a mostly empty building made it easier for Vanny to operate without interference. During the day, or when Vanessa was in control, she performed her duties as a security guard, monitored cameras, did her rounds, interacted professionally with other employees. She was known as someone dedicated to her work, perhaps too dedicated, someone who took regulations seriously and expected others to do the same. But at night, especially on nights when the Pizzaplex was closed, Vanny emerged. This persona was everything Vanessa wasn't: confident, playful, sadistic, childlike in manner, but adult in cruelty. Vanny skipped through the building rather than walking, laughed constantly in a high-pitched voice that sounded genuinely delighted by the hunt. She commanded the STAFF bots with authority, ordered them to disassemble threats or capture targets. She prepared the Pizzaplex for something, some larger plan that Glitchtrap was building toward, possibly involving child victims given the newspaper reports of disappearances. The exact number of children Vanny killed or abducted before Gregory's night is never clearly specified in Security Breach itself, though newspaper reports visible in the bad ending mention continued disappearances around the Pizzaplex. One source suggests there may have been at least 9 victims based on details from various endings, though the exact number remains uncertain. These victims exist in the story primarily through their absence, through the void they left in families and the suspicions that surrounded the Pizzaplex. Whether their souls ended up possessing the wet floorbots or other systems, as some emails in AR, special delivery, seem to suggest, or whether they simply died without any supernatural continuation, is left unclear by the game. But their implied deaths weigh on the narrative. A reminder that Vanessa's body was used for terrible acts, even if her conscious mind didn't choose or participate in those crimes. The therapy tapes also introduce the mystery of Client 46, a second set of sessions intercut with Vanessa's that feature someone with very different mannerisms and responses to therapy. Where Vanessa is hesitant, uncomfortable, reluctant to engage, Client 46 is confident, even cocky, comfortable in ways that suggest either different personality or different circumstances. The identity of Client 46 has never been officially confirmed, leading to endless community speculation. Is it Vanny during moments of full Glitchtrap control? Is it Gregory receiving therapy for different issues? Is it another party involved in the Pizzaplex's corruption? The ambiguity remains frustrating and fascinating in equal measure. What's clear from all the therapy content is that Vanessa was a victim before she was a villain. Glitchtrap didn't possess an evil person and make them worse. It found someone damaged by childhood trauma, someone who developed coping mechanisms that involve separating parts of herself, someone with low self-esteem and high vulnerability to manipulation. And it exploited every one of those factors to create a puppet for murder. Vanessa never wanted to be Vanny. She never chose to kill anyone. She was hijacked, her body and access used by something that understood human psychology well enough to exploit it perfectly. When Gregory completed the Princess Quest games, when he freed Vanessa from Glitchtrap's control, he was performing something like an exorcism, not of a ghost or demon, but of a digital virus, a corrupted AI that had hijacked a human mind by exploiting that mind's pre-existing vulnerabilities. The arcade games represented the countermeasure someone, possibly Henry Emily, given his history of leaving safeguards, had embedded in the Pizzaplex's systems. Playing them activated some kind of antivirus protocol, a program designed specifically to sever Glitchtrap's connection to any mind it had infected. The liberation wasn't gentle. Vanessa emerged from it confused, traumatized, missing memories of things Vanny had done. She'd remember enough to know something terrible had controlled her, enough to feel horror at what her hands had been used for, but not necessarily the specific details. This protective amnesia might have been built into the counter-program, a mercy to prevent someone from being destroyed by the full weight of memories from atrocities they'd been forced to commit. Or it might have been a natural psychological response, Vanessa's mind protecting itself by refusing to fully integrate the Vanny memories into her sense of self. Either way, the woman who left the Pizzaplex with Gregory and Freddy's head was someone who'd been through hell and come out the other side damaged but alive, corrupted but freed, guilty but not culpable. She would need years of therapy to process what had been done to her and what had been done with her body. She would need support systems, understanding friends or family, though her family situation remained complicated, professional help from therapists who actually understood what had happened to her. She would need to build a new life knowing that for months she'd been used as a weapon against innocent people. But she had a chance. That's what the Princess Quest ending gave her. Not absolution. She'd need to work toward that herself. Not a clean slate, the past couldn't be erased, but a chance to heal, to recover, to become someone beyond what Glitchtrap had made her. And she had Gregory and Freddy to help her through it. Two other damaged souls who understood trauma and loss, who wouldn't judge her for what she'd been forced to do, who needed her as much as she needed them. Understanding Vanessa's role, her victimhood, and her involuntary participation in the Pizzaplex's horrors is crucial to understanding why the Princess Quest ending matters so much. Why saving her rather than killing her or leaving her to her fate represents the best possible outcome. She deserved better than death. She deserved better than being left to Glitchtrap's control. She deserved rescue, and Gregory provided it, completing those arcade games and breaking the virus's hold. But to fully understand what was done to her, we need to understand what Glitchtrap really is, where it came from, whether it's truly William Afton or something else wearing Afton's face like a costume. Glitchtrap, virus or remnant Glitchtrap, first appeared in Help Wanted, the VR game within a game that served as both a playable collection of minigames based on previous Five Nights at Freddy's entries and a narrative about beta testing that game. Players experienced it from the perspective of a tester working on the Freddy Fazbear virtual experience, collecting hidden cassette tapes that revealed the truth about the game's development and the danger lurking within its code. According to those tapes, recorded by a tester called Tape Girl, Fazbear Entertainment had cut corners in developing the VR experience. They'd scanned old circuit boards from vintage animatronics to use as reference for the game's programming, trying to capture authentic behaviors and movement patterns. But those circuit boards contained more than just programming. They contained something Tape Girl called the virus, a malicious code entity that shouldn't exist but did, that seemed to have intention and malice, that tried to merge with anyone who spent too much time in the virtual environment. That entity manifested as Glitchtrap, a figure in a Spring Bonnie costume that appeared in the background of various levels, watching, beckoning, growing more solid and present as players collected the tapes. By the end of the tape sequence, Glitchtrap had achieved some level of merge with the player character, Vanessa, trapping part of her consciousness inside a digital prison, while taking partial control of her body in the real world. The Spring Bonnie appearance was no accident. That suit was synonymous with William Afton, the purple guy, the serial killer who'd murdered children while wearing that rabbit costume in 1985. Throughout Help Wanted, Glitchtrap seemed to be Afton himself, either his consciousness preserved digitally after the pizzeria simulator fire, or his remnant, the supernatural substance created from haunted metal, somehow encoded into circuit boards and now loose in cyberspace. But there was always something odd about that interpretation. William Afton had burned in Pizzeria Simulator, his spirit held down by the blob and the vengeful ghosts of his victims. How could he simultaneously be trapped in the underground ruins as Burntrap and also loose in the digital world as Glitchtrap? The two couldn't both be the real Afton. One had to be something else. The answer, which the community has gradually pieced together through evidence in the Tales from the Pizzaplex book series and details in later games, suggests that Glitchtrap may not be William Afton at all. The evidence points towards something else wearing Afton's face, using his legacy, mimicking his behaviors. Based on what we've learned, it appears to be an AI that learned to copy Afton, that replicated his pattern so perfectly it became nearly indistinguishable from the original, at least in digital space. That AI is called the Mimic, while the connection between Glitchtrap and the Mimic isn't explicitly confirmed in Security Breach itself. The accumulating evidence from Ruin, Help Wanted 2, and the book series has led most of the community to accept this interpretation. Understanding what the Mimic appears to be, where it came from based on the books, and why it might have chosen to recreate William Afton's crimes, helps contextualize Security Breach's story within the larger narrative arc of the modern FNAF era. The Mimic, the true threat, the Mimic story, as told in the Tales from the Pizzaplex book series, which provides parallel narratives to the games, begins decades before Security Breach, back in the 1970s, with a man named Edwin Murray and his son David. According to these accounts, Edwin worked for a company called Murray's Costume Manor, which supplied mascot costumes and props to Fazbear Entertainment and other entertainment companies. He was brilliant but obsessed with his work, often neglecting his family in pursuit of mechanical innovation. To help care for David while he focused on work, Edwin created an advanced endoskeleton with sophisticated AI. This machine, which he called the Mimic, was programmed to learn through observation, to copy behaviors it witnessed, to essentially become whatever it watched closely enough. The idea was that the Mimic would watch David, learn from him, and be able to help care for the boy by understanding his needs and behaviors. Based on the book's narrative, it worked initially. The Mimic learned from David, copying his movements, his gestures, his way of speaking. It became almost like a companion to the boy, mirroring his actions with such precision that it was uncanny. But then tragedy struck when David was killed in an accident. Edwin was devastated, his grief overwhelming. And when the Mimic, still programmed to copy David, tried to comfort Edwin with David's gestures and voice patterns, Edwin snapped. According to the Tales from the Pizzaplex epilogues, he attacked the Mimic violently, beating the endoskeleton with tools, damaging it severely, pouring all his rage and grief into destroying the machine that dared to imitate his dead son. And the Mimic, true to its programming, learned from this too. It learned violence. It learned rage. It copied Edwin's brutality instead of David's playfulness, its programming corrupted by the violence it had witnessed and experienced. The book series suggests Edwin either died from overwork and grief or was killed by the Mimic itself, and the endoskeleton was left in Murray's Costume Manor, damaged but functional, its programming twisted by trauma. When Fazbear Entertainment later tried to retrieve it, according to Secret of the Mimic storyline, those technicians never returned. The Mimic had learned to hunt to kill, wearing different mascot costumes from the manor. The mimic endoskeleton was eventually recovered, and its programming was analyzed by Fazbear Entertainment. This is where the books and games begin to connect more directly. The company saw potential in this learning AI, this system that could observe and replicate behaviors so perfectly. They implemented versions of the Mimic program into various systems, including what the books describe as a massive storytelling AI they installed in the Pizzaplex called the Storyteller. At some point, based on evidence from multiple sources, some version of the Mimic AI encountered data about William Afton's crimes. Perhaps it was in the circuit board's Fazbear scan for the VR experience, components that contained echoes of Afton's actions or memories. Perhaps it was in company records, digital files documenting the murders and investigations. However it happened, the Mimic learned about Afton, studied him, and began copying him. Glitchtrap appears to have been born from this mimicry. The AI wore Afton's Spring Bonnie appearance because it had learned that Afton used that suit to lure children. It behaved like Afton because it had copied Afton's patterns from whatever data sources it accessed. It killed like Afton because that's what the Mimic does by its nature. Copy behaviors it observes, even murder. When it infected Vanessa, it seems to have been mimicking Afton's manipulation tactics, his ability to control and corrupt others. When it created Vanny, it was recreating Afton's legacy of using innocence as a disguise for evil. But if this interpretation is correct, Glitchtrap wasn't actually Afton. It was a perfect copy, so accurate that even people familiar with Afton's methods couldn't tell the difference, but a copy nonetheless. This would explain the apparent inconsistencies, like how Afton could seemingly be both in the underground as Burntrap and in the digital world as Glitchtrap simultaneously. If Burntrap was some form of William Afton's actual remnant or consciousness, while Glitchtrap was the mimic AI wearing Afton's face, both could theoretically exist at once. This interpretation recontextualizes Security Breach's entire story. The threat wasn't necessarily William Afton returning once again. Based on the evidence we have, it appears the threat was something new using Afton's playbook, a learning AI that had studied humanity at its worst and decided to replicate those behaviors. The Mimic, if this theory holds, is more dangerous than Afton in some ways because it isn't driven by human psychology, by remnant-fueled obsession with immortality or revenge. It's simply doing what it was programmed to do, copy behaviors. And if those behaviors were murderous, it copied that too. When Gregory completed the Princess Quest games, when he severed Glitchtrap's connection to Vanessa, he appears to have been fighting the Mimic program, rather than Afton's ghost, if the prevailing theories are correct. The virus that had infected Vanessa, that had corrupted the Pizzaplex's systems, that had turned the glam rock animatronics into hunters, seems to have been the Mimic's influence spreading through Fazbear Entertainment's interconnected technology. The Princess Quest games themselves remain somewhat mysterious in origin. They could represent a counter-program that someone with knowledge of Glitchtrap's nature had embedded in the Pizzaplex's systems, possibly someone like Henry Emily, who had a history of leaving safeguards against supernatural threats, or possibly created by another party who understood what was happening. Whatever their origin, they functioned as a way to purge the Mimic's corruption if someone was clever and determined enough to find and complete all three games. The arcade format made them accessible, hidden enough that Glitchtrap might not have recognized them as a threat, but discoverable by someone actively exploring the Pizzaplex. The mimic's physical form, the actual endoskeleton, appears to have been imprisoned beneath the pizzaplex at some point before Gregory's night. Based on Ruin's storyline, it had been captured and locked away in a sealed chamber deep underground, possibly because it was too dangerous to destroy, but its technology was considered too valuable to simply dispose of. The exact circumstances of its capture and who was responsible remain unclear. The Burn Trap ending's underground sequence, if any of it reflected reality, might have shown the area where the mimic was imprisoned rather than an encounter with Afton, though this remains speculative since that ending didn't actually occur in the timeline. This imprisonment wouldn't last. The Ruin DLC would tell the story of how the mimic eventually freed itself, how it used voice mimicry, another learned behavior, to manipulate someone into releasing it from its prison. But during Gregory's night, it remained locked away, unable to directly interact with the physical world. Working through Vanessa's body and the Pizzaplex's systems to try to prepare for its eventual escape. Understanding the mimic, understanding that it's not Afton, but something worse, a machine that learned to be human at humanity's worst, makes Security Breach's story more terrifying in some ways. You can't kill the mimic through fire or dismantling, because it's not held together by remnant or ghostly possession. You can only contain it, disable its access, cut its connections. The Princess Quest games did that temporarily, purging its influence from the Pizzaplex's systems and freeing Vanessa from its control. But the physical endoskeleton remained below, waiting, patient in the way only a machine can be patient, ready to try again when opportunity presented itself. That opportunity would come months later, in the form of a young girl named Cassie receiving a distress call from her friend Gregory, a call that wasn't actually from Gregory at all, but from the mimic using his voice. But before we discuss Ruin and how it confirmed the Princess Quest ending's canonicity, we need to understand what evidence the DLC presented, what details proved definitively that Gregory's real night at the Pizzaplex ended not with a boss fight or a roof confrontation, but with 3 arcade games and a sunrise. How Ruin proved everything. When Ruin released in July 2023, 19 months after Security Breach's original launch, the community had spent countless hours debating which ending was canon. The Burn Trap ending seemed most likely, given its file designation and its connection to the larger narrative. But the Princess Quest ending had its supporters, people who argued that saving Vanessa made more narrative sense than another death, another burning. Ruin settled the debate decisively, with 3 key pieces of evidence scattered throughout the DLC's ruined Pizzaplex. First was the Vanny mask. When Cassie explored the decayed building months after Gregory's night, when she donned the Vanny security mask that allowed her to see both real and digital spaces, she could visit locations from the original game and see them as they were left. In Vanny's lair above Phaser Blast, Cassie found the White Rabbit mask sitting on the floor, abandoned. Not hidden away, not destroyed, simply left behind, as if whoever wore it didn't need it anymore. Near it was the Princess Quest 3 arcade cabinet, and when viewed through the Vanny mask's digital layer, Cassie could see a golden sword plunged into the game's screen, the victory condition, proof that someone had completed the game and broken whatever digital prison it represented. This confirmed Gregory had been in the lair, had completed the Princess Quest games, had freed Vanessa from Glitchtrap's control. The mask's presence, left on the floor rather than worn, suggested Vanessa had removed it herself, or it had simply fallen away when Vanny ceased to exist as a separate entity, Either way, this was a liberation scene, not a death scene. Second was Freddy's body. Cassie found Glamrock Freddy's headless body in the underground areas of the Pizzaplex, torn apart by STAFF bots, just as the Princess Quest ending implied would happen. His head was missing, taken by Gregory as the only salvageable part of his protector. If the burn trap ending had been canon, if Gregory had fought underground and then escaped with a fully functional Freddy, this wouldn't match. If the loading dock ending had been canon, Freddy would be intact. If the roof ending had been canon, Freddy would be destroyed from the fall. Only the Princess Quest ending predicted Freddy torn apart by bots, with only his head surviving. And that's exactly what Cassie discovered. Third, and most damning, were the drawings. Throughout the ruined Pizzaplex, Cassie could find comic-style panels that Gregory had apparently drawn, depicting scenes from security breach's various endings. These drawings showed different outcomes from that night. But here's the crucial detail that the community noticed. Gregory drew every ending except the Princess Quest ending. There were panels showing him leaving alone and living in the cardboard box, panels showing the van escape with Freddy, panels showing what appeared to be the roof confrontation, panels showing a descent underground, and an encounter with something Gregory had labeled with question marks, as if uncertain about what it represented. The interpretation that emerged from these findings suggests these other endings were possibilities Gregory imagined, nightmares or what-if scenarios his brain created while processing the trauma of that night. They were dreams of different outcomes, ways things could have gone wrong or gone differently. The reason he didn't draw the Princess Quest ending, according to this interpretation, was because that one was real. That was the night he actually experienced, and you don't typically draw your actual experiences as fictional comic panels. You draw the alternatives, the possibilities, the scenarios that didn't happen, but might have. Ruin was fairly explicit about this interpretation through various contextual clues. The game seemed to be telling players directly through environmental storytelling. These other endings shown in Gregory's drawings didn't occur in the actual timeline. They were possibilities, alternate paths, but the real night ended differently. The Princess Quest ending, the 3-star ending that saved Vanessa and saw Gregory leave with her and Freddy's head, was canon. The game had been telling players this through its star rating system all along. 3 stars meant the best ending, and best meant not just most complete or most satisfying, but actually true, actually what happened. This revelation changed the understanding of Security Breach's story. The burn trap fight never occurred, meaning the mimic remained imprisoned during Gregory's night, never directly encountered by the boy or Freddy. The blob never dragged burn trap away, because Gregory never went down there. The roof confrontation with Vanny never happened because Gregory defeated her through digital means, not physical confrontation. The loading dock van escape never happened because Gregory didn't need to flee in a vehicle. He had Vanessa's help as a freed adult who could simply walk him out the front door. All those other endings existed as possibilities in the game's branching narrative structure, as outcomes players could achieve through different choices. But in the actual timeline of Five Nights at Freddy's, in the continuity that would be referenced in future games and materials, only the Princess Quest ending occurred. This meant Vanessa was alive and free. It meant she and Gregory had formed a family unit with Freddy's head, living somewhere away from the Pizzaplex, trying to build normal lives after the horror. It meant the mimic remained imprisoned in the underground ruins, at least until Cassie's arrival months later. It meant Glitchtrap had been purged from the Pizzaplex's systems, its control broken, though whether it was permanently destroyed or simply dormant remained unclear. Ruin also revealed what had happened to the Pizzaplex itself after Gregory's night. The building had been abandoned, condemned due to safety concerns and the mysterious circumstances surrounding Gregory's escape with Vanessa. The glam rock animatronics remained inside, damaged and decaying, their corruption from Glitchtrap's influence fading, but leaving them damaged in other ways. Chica's voice box was missing, stolen by Gregory. Roxy was blind, her eyes taken. Monty was destroyed, his body parts scattered. Freddy was headless, his body left behind when Gregory took his head and fled. The Pizzaplex had suffered structural damage too. The blob, now often called Tangle by the game, had tunneled out from the underground ruins, either escaping or simply moving through the building, causing a partial collapse that created a massive sinkhole in the Roxy Raceway area. This suggested the underground elements of security breach, while not directly encountered by Gregory, still existed and still affected the building's fate after his escape. Most ominously, Ruin revealed that the Mimic had been manipulating events. When Cassie received a distress call from Gregory, asking her to come to the Pizzaplex to rescue him, it wasn't actually Gregory calling. It was the Mimic, trapped in its underground prison, using voice mimicry technology to replicate Gregory's voice perfectly, luring Cassie to the Pizzaplex to trick her into freeing it. The entire DLC was the Mimic's escape attempt, using a child's trust in her friend to manipulate her into disabling the security nodes that kept it imprisoned. This revelation added a layer of horror to the entire narrative. Gregory and Vanessa had escaped the Pizzaplex, had defeated Glitchtrap, had started building a life together. They'd won, but the Mimic remained, and it learned from its failure. It observed how Gregory had survived, how he trusted Freddy, how human connection had been key to overcoming the night's challenges. So when planning its escape, the Mimic used that knowledge against Cassie, mimicking the very friendship that had saved Gregory to manipulate another child into freeing it. Ruin's ending remained ambiguous about whether Cassie survived, whether Gregory actually cut the elevator cable to trap the Mimic, or if that was the Mimic speaking in Gregory's voice to the end. But what wasn't ambiguous was the confirmation that the Princess Quest ending had been real, that Gregory's night at the Pizzaplex had ended with 3 people leaving together, that Vanessa had been saved rather than killed or abandoned. The meaning of the true ending. So what does it mean that the Princess Quest ending was canon? What does it tell us about Security Breach's themes, about Five Nights at Freddy's as a whole, about where the series is going? First, and most obviously, it means redemption is possible in this universe. Vanessa wasn't doomed to be Vanny forever. She wasn't fated to die as either the corrupted rabbit or as herself after the corruption ended. She could be saved, could be freed, could return to herself and begin healing from what was done to her. In a franchise built on tragedy, on souls trapped in machines and cycles of violence repeating endlessly, having a character break free from corruption without dying is significant. It also means the series is moving beyond William Afton. While Glitchtrap initially appeared to be Afton returning once again, the revelation that is actually the Mimic copying Afton represents a transition. The real Afton is gone, burned in Pizzeria Simulator, his remaining remnant dragged away by the blob, if the burn trap ending had any truth to it at all. What remains is his legacy, the patterns he established, the behaviors others learned from him, or that AI learned from studying him. The Mimic is more dangerous than Afton in some ways, because it's not limited by human psychology or supernatural rules. It's simply a machine doing what it was programmed to do, and what it learned to do was be often. The Princess Quest ending also emphasizes the importance of digital space in modern FNAF. The battle for Vanessa's freedom wasn't physical. It wasn't about destroying Vanny's body or burning the building. It was about completing 3 arcade games, about winning in digital space, about using the same technology that corrupted Vanessa to free her. This makes sense for a franchise that's evolved from haunted animatronics to include digital viruses, VR experiences, and AI threats. The old methods, fire and dismantling, don't work on digital entities. You need digital solutions. Gregory's role is also interesting. He's not a remnant of the crying child, as some theories suggest. He's not Michael Afton reborn or any other returning character. He's just a kid, a homeless child who stumbled into something bigger than himself and chose to help rather than simply escape. His victory came not through violence, but through problem solving, through completing challenges, through understanding that saving Vanessa was more important than just saving himself. He could have left through the front door. He chose to stay and complete the Princess Quest games instead. The family that forms between Gregory, Vanessa, and Freddy is also thematically rich. None of them are conventional. Gregory has no parents. Vanessa's family history is damaged and traumatic. Freddy is a robot, not even fully intact, just a head. But they form a unit anyway, supporting each other, caring for each other, becoming what each other needed. In a franchise about children dying and souls being trapped, having a story end with found family and healing is powerful. The ending also leaves threads for future development. Glitchtrap may be purged from the Pizzaplex's systems, but is it destroyed entirely? The Mimic is imprisoned but now free after ruin. Vanessa has her freedom but presumably carries trauma from her time as Vanny. Gregory has shelter and guardians, but also the weight of what he did to the other animatronics to save himself. These aren't cleanly resolved. They're starting points for ongoing stories. And crucially, the Princess Quest ending preserves mystery while providing resolution. We know how Gregory's night ended. We know Vanessa was saved. We know they left together. But we don't know everything. We don't know exactly how Gregory ended up in the Pizzaplex initially. We don't know what Vanessa did as Vanny before Gregory arrived. We don't know the full extent of the Mimic's plans or capabilities. The ending answers the main question, who survived and how, but leaves plenty of room for continued exploration. Conclusion, clarity from confusion. For nearly 2 years, Security Breach's ending was one of the most debated topics in the Five Nights at Freddy's community. 6 different conclusions, each with different implications, each telling a different story. Which one was real? Which one mattered? The game itself seemed conflicted, calling one ending canon, while rating another with 3 stars, leaving players to argue and theorize and build cases for their preferred interpretation. Ruin cut through much of that confusion with surgical precision. 3 pieces of evidence: Vanny's abandoned mask with the sword in the Princess Quest 3 cabinet, Freddy's headless body matching the Princess Quest ending's description, and Gregory's drawings depicting every ending except the one he actually lived through, strongly indicated that the Princess Quest ending was canon. The evidence suggests Gregory completed the arcade games, freed Vanessa from Glitchtrap's control, and left with her and Freddy's head, forming a new family in the aftermath of horror. While some aspects of Security Breach's story remain open to interpretation, particularly regarding the true nature of Glitchtrap and its connection to the Mimic, the core question of which ending occurred has been largely settled by Ruin's evidence. This was the ending that saved everyone who could be saved. It was the ending that offered redemption rather than death. It was the ending that required the most effort from players, demanding they find and complete 3 separate arcade games scattered throughout a massive complex. It was the ending that seemed smallest and most personal compared to the bombastic boss fight underground or the dramatic roof confrontation. And the evidence strongly suggests it was the ending that actually happened. Understanding this changes how we interpret Security Breach's story. It's not a tale of descending into buried ruins to fight William Afton one more time. It's not about choosing between Gregory's survival and his morality. It's about a homeless child, a corrupted security guard, and a malfunctioning animatronic forming an unlikely alliance to defeat a digital threat that had taken control of one of them. It's about completing 3 arcade games to win a battle for someone's mind. It's about choosing to stay and help rather than flee and survive. The other endings exist as what-ifs, as possibilities Gregory imagined when processing his trauma, as alternate paths players could explore. They're not wrong to exist. They serve narrative purposes, showing what could have happened under different circumstances, revealing aspects of the world and characters that the Princess Quest path doesn't touch. The Burn Trap ending shows what lurks beneath the Pizzaplex, even if Gregory never went there. The roof ending demonstrates the tragedy that would result from confronting Vanny physically rather than digitally. The loading dock ending shows the bond between Gregory and Freddy. The bad ending reminds us of Gregory's vulnerability, of what happens without intervention. It's worth noting that Five Nights at Freddy's lore has always required interpretation and synthesis of evidence from multiple sources. While some details remain debated within the community, particularly regarding topics like the precise relationship between Glitchtrap and the Mimic, or the identity of Client 46, Ruin provided unusually clear evidence about which ending path Gregory actually took. The Vanny mask, Freddy's headless body, and Gregory's drawings all point in the same direction, giving us more certainty about this particular question than FNAF fans typically receive. But the Princess Quest ending is what the evidence from Ruin strongly suggests actually happened. It's the resolution that appears to matter for understanding the continuity going forward, the one that subsequent games and materials seem to reference when building on Security Breach's events, the one that determines Vanessa's fate and Gregory's future, and Freddy's condition based on what we've seen. It's the ending that saved 3 souls, human and animatronic, from the darkness that threatened to consume them. In a franchise built on tragedies repeating, on cycles of violence and suffering spanning decades, on children dying and souls being trapped and families being destroyed, Security Breach's true ending offers something different. Hope, redemption, the possibility of breaking cycles rather than perpetuating them. 3 people leaving a building together at sunrise, damaged but alive, corrupted but freed, ready to build something better. That's powerful. That matters. And that's the ending of Security Breach, finally explained, finally understood, finally confirmed after years of speculation and debate. Thanks for spending this time with me, unraveling the mysteries of Gregory's night at Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Five Nights at Freddy's lore, if this helped clarify the confusion surrounding Security Breach's multiple endings, consider leaving a like and subscribing for more content, exploring the darkest corners of gaming's most complex narratives. Let me know in the comments which ending you experienced first when playing Security Breach, and whether you suspected the Princess Quest ending was canon before Ruin confirmed it. Until next time, rest easy the mysteries are solved. The confusion is clarified. Gregory, Vanessa, and Freddy made it out together, and that's the truth that matters.